Hi, welcome to the Be Courageous Online Summit. My name is Tracy Tadero, and the intention for this summit is to provide support and guidance to anybody that's going through times of adversity and turmoil right now, which is pretty much everybody. So anyways, today we have two very special guests. Emily and Erik Orton are national speakers and authors of 7 at Sea, Why a New York City Family Cast-Off Convention for a Life-Changing Year on a Sailboat. Featured as a New York Times Top 10 travel book of 2019, that sailing trip opened the Ortons to unexpected possibilities. They have lived nomadically across Europe and the Pacific Islands since 2018 until the global pandemic. Growth seekers with thoughtful, original insights and perspectives, Emily and Erik shine a light on their own excuses and fears as they trade them to live deliberately, inviting others to live a better story, doing what matters most to them. Erik is an Emmy Award-winning writer with a decade in both creative and management sides of the Broadway industry, and Emily has been teaching since 1996 in public school, early childhood development, and K-12 home education. Their masterwork is raising their 5 children, the youngest which has Down syndrome. Erik and Emily have been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, NPR, KTLA, Hallmark's Home and Family, Picker and Ben, and NYPIX 11 News, Family Travelers Magazine, Drift Travel Magazine, Your Teen Magazine, New York Metro Parents, and many podcasts, including Disrupt Yourself and Going Scared. Wow. Welcome, Erik and Emily. Thank you for joining us. That is quite the layout of adventures you've had.
Thanks, Tracy. It's so great to be with you today. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Tracy.
Yes, we're so glad you're here. And so we want to hear, you have been out on this adventure, sailing the seas with your 5 kids, right? They all were with you during the journey. So share with us what that looked like.
Okay.
Who wants to take it?
I think you should start because it started with you.
Okay. So yeah, it started, this was many years in the making, and I had taken a big gamble, a professional gamble, and I was producing my first off-Broadway show. I was working on Wicked at the time and left that to do my own thing, and it was a complete bomb. The show was beautiful, but we just weren't, the show financially was a loss, and so we closed the show essentially on the eve of our 4th child's birth. Our son Eli was born, and then we closed the show right away. And so I'm basically unemployed, broke, and heartbroken.
Yeah.
4 kids at home. Emily is recovering from just delivering Eli, and I just don't know what to do. I don't want to go back to work for somebody else. I end up taking a temp job downtown where I can just pay the bills. I'm working night shifts. It's something that I have no interest or love in. And while I'm down there kind of feeling sorry for myself and embarrassed, I realize I'm watching the suns, these sailboats go up and down the Hudson River at sunset, and I watch them and I think, oh, that just looks peaceful and beautiful. And I realize that there's a sailing school right downstairs from where I work. And I'm telling Emily about this night after night, week after week. And finally she encourages me. She's like, you should go in and check it out. And I'm like, no, I'm not a sailor. I don't know how to sail. And she's like, anyway, she kept encouraging me. Finally, I crossed the threshold, asked them. They were super nice. And that was the beginning where we decided to take our first sailing class as a family. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I was excited for him to learn. I didn't really want to do it because I was really scared of deep water. Like, I was 4 years old when Jaws came out, and the advertisements impacted me deeply. So for over 30 years, I had not, really been a water person. And he said, don't get in the water, stay on the boat, like learn how to sail, then you can stay on the boat and you don't have to worry about the water part. And I'm like, fine, whatever. We had these 2 kids, 11 and 9, who were really excited to be in this class. And we had to take it all together because there wasn't anybody who could take it with him with his night shift job. So
You had to have 4 people.
Yeah.
So I wrangled her and our 2 little girls.
Yeah, there wasn't really a way around, you know, I was like, there's 8.5 million people in this city. Why does it have to be us? But it was us. And we went, and, you know, the first things we learned were that we got really seasick. So we did whatever we could to overcome the seasickness. And then Erik's like, once we passed the class, let's do a big family sale. And that was a disaster. Really, we went out on Tom's River in New Jersey on this little 24-foot boat, and people were pointing at us and laughing at us. Like, we were wobbling and the kids were screaming and we were just a circus. And so it wasn't really an auspicious beginning for this dream. And what I love about that is that just because something isn't going well doesn't mean you should stop trying or that you should stop doing it. This dream did take a little break, and we picked it up 2 years later.
Yeah.
We decided, you know what, let's try again. This actually might be something really special for our family, a thing we could do together. The kids were a little older then, and we started going out anyway. The short story is that we really loved our time out there with no cell service, looking each other in the eyes. And we had started to shift on what we called success. You know, and we wanted more time. We saw how fast time was going by, and we wanted more time with our kids, more of that time where we look in each other's eyes. And this was moving that direction. So we wanted more of it. And we, you know, graduated from those small boats to taking classes on larger boats, to then captaining boat for a week, then taking the kids out for a few days before we finally took the leap and left everything we had in New York City and just moved aboard this fixer-upper sailboat in St. Martin. And when we got there, we just realized, like, this was probably the dumbest thing we've ever done. You know, like, we didn't know anything about diesel engines. We're not electricians. You know, we weren't doctors or anything if there were a problem. And so we were just feeling...
Again,
you know,
we were feeling sorry for ourselves again, because we got exactly what we wanted.
We found this was like kind of on loop. Like, we'd get an idea and take a few steps and then get pushed back a little bit and then come forward a little bit more. And but we were out there, and we really all just kind of counseled as a family, and we're like, you know what I wish we were doing right now is sitting at home on our couch, ordering a pizza and watching Netflix. Maybe you think, oh, I wish I were on a sailboat in the Caribbean, you know, because you always wish you're somewhere else, right? Yeah. But it was hard, and it was hot, and the learning curve was so steep, and everything was so expensive. So Erik had a great idea. Before we, you know, threw in the towel, he suggested we go to this little island.
Yeah, so there was St. Martin in the Caribbean has this little park island off the coast, just a mile or so, and we sailed up there, and I was like, okay, we've learned in our marriage and in our lives that whenever we're feeling stuck, if we can just get in touch with our gratitude, then we can usually find a way forward. And so we went out to this little island, and it was a miserable, horrible trip where everyone got sick and we had trouble anchoring the boat, but we just crashed and slept. And the next morning we woke up and we all went ashore, and we went around and we asked the kids, and we said, what's going well right now? What's awesome about right now? And we videotaped these interviews with our kids, and we still watch it to this day.
Yeah.
And as we sort of took stock of all the good things that were going on, we relaxed. We realized it wasn't as bad as we thought. We could figure this out. And that was sort of the beginning. And from there, we just sort of settled in. We said, we're going to figure this out. We're going to make it work. And we spent the next year just having some of the best time of our life, making amazing friends, learning things we never could have learned any other way. And we spent that year sailing through the Caribbean, the Bahamas, over to Florida, back up to our home in New York City. And we're so glad we did.
I mean, there were mechanical problems, and we did miscalculate and run out of gas on a long crossing, and we had to kind of skirt around hurricanes, and you know, but all those good things happened too. And every part of the trip galvanized us as a family, and it kind of showed us what we were capable of, and it helped our kids. But they said, I asked the oldest ones what they got out of it, and At the time, our 15-year-old said, living on the sailboat made me comfortable being uncomfortable. And that was a great gift, to give a child on the cusp of adulthood. And our oldest daughter was 17 by the time we were coming up the East Coast. And I asked her how this trip had changed her. And she said, it didn't change me. It made me more myself. And I think that's what a crisis will do. A crisis or a hard time or an intense experience will really show us who we are and what matters to us. And so because we had so many intense experiences stacked on top of each other over that year, she had grown deeply into her own identity. And I think we all felt that. And we felt, as we came home, we felt like some of the greatest treasures we were bringing with us, besides new friends and a stronger connection as a family, were 3 kinds of confidence. And the first was competence, because we had learned new skills. And the second was credibility, because we did what we said we would do. And then the third was just this sense of calm, because over and over again, we didn't know what was coming next. We didn't know what was going to happen next. And we just kept moving forward, trusting that we would figure it out, because there was so much precedent.
Yeah, I think once you realize that you can look back on a track record of, hey, this was an unknown, we moved towards it, we solved it, we figured it out. There's another unknown, we're just going to keep moving towards it. And I think right now, especially, everyone is dealing with so much unknown, so much uncertainty, so much worry. Worry was a big part of the experience, especially for me. And to build a track record with yourself of moving through uncertainty and worry successfully does create this kind of calm that Emily is talking about. And you just realize, okay, we're going to figure it out. It's not going to kill us.
Oh, it might.
It might, but if it does, but you just sort of kind of look at it squarely and just say, what's the worst that could happen? And
how likely is that?
How likely is that? And can we, if it happens, what do we do? And if we can improve on that, what do we do to improve on it? And
we had also a really good question that we added to our repertoire to balance that out, because that's easy. Everybody worries about what could go wrong.
Yeah, and before we left, we knew all the things that could go wrong, and we worried about all of them. We worried a lot, and then we kind of flipped it and we said, well, what if we also said, there's everything that can go wrong, but we said, what are all the things that could go right? And we started to explore that idea, and we said, these are just as likely as these, and how many things are there that can go right, and what do those look like? And once we started to really fill out that side of the equation, it was a no-brainer. We're like, we've got to go. This, we cannot afford to potentially miss out on all of this good stuff. And I think most of us, most of the time, focus on everything that can go wrong. And that's good, and that's important.
It's responsible.
It's responsible, but it's intellectually honest to also acknowledge the other half of that equation. And once we start to become aware of and appreciate the possibility of all those things, we get a little braver. We get a little bit more willing to take a risk, because we say, oh, what? This could really be worth it. And so anyway, that's what got us out there. And I think that's what kept us out there. And it's what's kept us going since then, doing not the same thing, but similar kinds of things.
New things, different things.
Yeah.
And I think another question that we ask, and we honestly do ask ourselves this question and guide our life by the answer. And that is, if I were in a movie of my life, what would I want myself to do next? And then we always think about the things that a hero would do, what we would want the hero to do. If I were in a movie of my life, would I want myself next to go crawl under the covers and hide, maybe for a little while, take a rest, assess, but ultimately we always find that when we ask that question, we want to see ourselves move towards growth. And it's usually the scary option because growth means change. And anyway, that's one of the ways that, like, Erik being a writer and me being an English teacher, we use that story framework to say, hey, what makes a great story also makes a great life. Let's act as if we're writing this story of our life, and how would we want to see it play out.
So how can the viewers who are watching and being in this, open sea of uncertainty of their own, right? How can you, or what can you share with them about being the hero of their own story? Like what would that look like for somebody who is experiencing those fears and uncertainty and the worry and, looking for answers and direction?
Sure. Well, in any story, and the structure of story is just as much about entertainment as it can also be a framework for life, because our lives are essentially stories. And in any story, you're going to have a victim, a villain, a hero, and a guide. And the victim is usually a small role. It's somebody who attracts a lot of resources because everybody wants to help a victim. But victims don't actually grow. They don't transform. They make the hero look good and they make the villain look bad.
Yeah.
The villain essentially has a sad backstory, and whenever they experience pain or struggle, their goal is to then return that pain and that struggle on other people so that everyone has kind of an equal experience.
And the villain never has friends.
Right.
Because the villain, always just wants to control or coerce. Villains always have like stooges, right? Or
minions.
Yeah.
Heroes, however, are willing to move towards uncertainty. They're willing to go at something when they don't know how it's going to turn out. And if they go through pain and struggles, their hope is to then protect other people from having to experience those same pain and struggles rather than inflict it upon them. And they are the ones that are running at a problem rather than running away from it. And it doesn't mean that they don't have setbacks. In fact, every hero, in the story of a structure, setbacks are mandatory. We never watch a movie where everything goes right for the hero.
Right.
That's boring. And so if our life is going to be a good story, we can't hope for everything to go right because we'll never grow. Because heroes get a lot of rewards for doing heroic things, but the best reward is transformation. By the end of the story, they've come from one place and they've gone through all kinds of ordeals and they come out on the other side a new kind of person. So that's what a hero does.
Oh, I want to just say one of the things that I really love about heroes is that they rarely feel like heroes. They rarely think, I've got this, and off they go and save the day. The heroes usually feel totally overwhelmed. They feel like it's beyond what they're capable of, and they just take the next step forward anyway. They maybe are asking like, well, if there's a hope that this could do some good, then they take the next step forward. And I think, when we talk about heroes and heroism, sometimes we think of like a grand act, but I think in the stories of our lives, sometimes the most heroic things we do are very quiet and small. It might be, I showed up again today, or it might be, I forgive you. Or it might be, you know what? I accept myself the way that I am. We're talking about transformation. And I remember one time when I was a young mother, I was young because I had my first child at 23 and I had 2 children. So I was in my mid-20s with 2 little babies here in New York City. And my friends were talking about all the exciting things they were doing in their single lives, going to clubs, flying to Peru, just doing all these things. And I was starting to feel a little sorry for myself. And I realized as I reflected that I had wanted nothing more than to marry this man, and that I had been the one who was like, we should have a family young, so we'll still be young when they grow up, and we'll have this energy for them and for each other and for life. And like everything that was happening was actually the way that I wanted it to be and the way that I had worked towards. And for me, the heroic thing I had to do was realize, oh, I'm already living my dream. And I'm going to stop comparing myself to what somebody else is doing. I'm just going to look at being grateful for, what I've accomplished and what I wanted and what I was able to get, because I know you don't always get to marry the person of your dreams, and you don't always get to have healthy children just because you want them. And anyway, I think it's just an example of how we can take ownership and take responsibility. And that's a character trait of the hero, that whether it's their fault or not, and in this case, it was totally me, but they will say like, okay, well, what can I do to make it better? So will you tell the fourth role, the fourth character so we have the victim, the villain, the hero.
And then you have the guide. And, you're a guide. You're helping people move into new uncertainty and become, you're helping people grow and transform. And so you're a guide. And anybody that is a guide has been a hero at some point in the past. They've gone through their own growth and transformation. And a guide is simply somebody that looks next to them or behind them and says, oh, somebody else could use some instruction or some encouragement or some wisdom, and we share it so that they can succeed in their hero's journey. And so all of us are each of these at different stages of our lives and to different degrees almost every day. But I think the more we move ourselves towards being a hero and then becoming a guide, and we spend less and less time being a victim and being a villain, the happier we're going to be, the better our lives turn out. And so I think going sailing for us was very much, we would not describe it initially as a heroic experience, and I don't feel like it's a heroic act, but we went through a hero's journey where we venture into something that feels like we're not that kind of person, but we go there anyway. We go through hardships, we learn, we discover new treasures, we bring them back home, we're a new person, and then we're ready for the next journey, the next uncertainty, and we're able to help anybody else that might want to go through what we just went through. And so that's the hero's journey. That's what we love to do. And every time we come back from one of these kinds of experiences, because we've done several since then, we just feel newer, we feel refreshed and younger and wiser and ready to go again, but also eager to help others who might have a desire to go through the same process in their own life.
And I think recognizing those four roles, if you can kind of feel that energy when you move into that, like feeling like you want to blame other people or blame the government or your circumstances or whatever it might be, you realize that, oh, I'm going into a weaker role. I'm going into a bit part. I'm going into a place where I'm not going to transform. I want everyone around me to change. And when we're going into those control spaces where we're like, just do what I said because I said so, that is moving into a villain energy. And I get that way probably, especially around bedtime. I'm like, low battery.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
We're not, we're not a democracy here. And so I feel that energy as well. And when you can recognize, oh, I'm moving into this role or that role, then you can make a conscious decision of, is this where I want to be? Am I going to be here on purpose? Or is this like a default or an old habit? Or just that I'm letting my emotions carry me along instead of actually thinking about where I want to go with my relationship or my attitude or my life right now. And I think that is something that can be helpful during this kind of crisis and during any kind of upset that shows up in your life moving forward, because, I think we all know this isn't going to be the last time something hard happens in our lives.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to post those on my refrigerator for my kids and I, and just be like, who are you at this moment, victim?
What's the story we're telling here? Talk to me.
Those
No,
are good
like that's
reminders.
ownership, right? When you have to go like, oh, I'm being a victim right now, or oh, I'm being a villain right now. I think that would be really good for us to be able to have an awareness of that, of like really, it's checking in with yourself, truly, right? Like,
Yeah.
where you at right now? You know, yeah, you
Yeah.
in the victim role for a little bit. Give yourself 10 minutes to have your little, pity party, and then let's step out of it and keep moving up that ladder, because it's about growth, right?
Yeah.
And perseverance, and talk about, the theme of this summit, be courageous. I mean, what you guys have done has been incredibly courageous, and it's so amazing that you're sharing your story. And even though you did it, literally, people are doing it in other ways, whether it's stepping into a new job or career, or following their dream, or downsizing or upsizing.
Well, I
Yeah.
just want to jump in here, Tracy, and clarify, because a lot of people think, yes, we went and we lived on a sailboat, and we're glad we did. It's not for everybody.
Mm.
Nobody should feel like, oh, because I don't want to do that, or anything like it, there's all kinds of adventures, there's all kinds of journeys, and to go on the hero's journey doesn't mean you have to do something dramatic like live on a sailboat. Like you said, it can be stepping into a new role at your current job. It can mean choosing to parent a different way.
I know for me, some of the things I've done, well, my literal one was the first time that I actually took like 5 minutes to just be brave about my fear of the water, and I actually went into snorkel. It transformed me, because I found that I loved snorkeling and I loved being under the water, and all those fears I had held for over 30 years didn't really hold up against my actual experience once I kind of poked back at my fears. But the question I came away with was, what other favorites are hiding behind my fears? And there have been so many things that I would be afraid of. And then when I actually do it, it's not that scary. Like when our youngest daughter was diagnosed with Down syndrome, I was really worried. I didn't feel like I was enough of a person to be a parent to this wonderful child who was going to have all these different kinds of needs I didn't understand yet. And within a year, I was like, hey, we should try for another baby. Like, who wouldn't want 2 kids like this? This is wonderful, and that didn't work out for us. She is our last, but just that my attitude changed. And once it was something even as small as learning to use a serger. I'm not a crafty person, and a serger is a kind of intimidating machine. If you've ever seen them, there's like 4 different thread bobbins, and I don't know, like it cuts the fabric while it's stitching it, and it's just a little scary. But I finally just got on YouTube. I figured out how to thread the thing, and I hemmed a couple of tablecloths, and I was like, okay. So whenever there's something where I can sense myself feeling like I don't belong there, I try to just tiptoe towards it, because I know that it will open up some brave space for me.
Perfect. Well, I think, I guess the question we ask the viewers is like, what is your sailboat, right? What is their sailboat right now? What do you need to step into? What are the obstacles potentially? What's your sharks? What's your deep waters? What does that look like? And just get in there and just go, right? Like, your story is such great inspiration for everybody who, is at this place of like, do I want to do something different? Do I want to step outside of the box and move my career in a different direction, or, start my family, whatever that looks like. So
yeah.
Can go in any direction.
And I think the more clear you get about what that vision is of what you want, the less scary it is to move towards it. When you're moving from, even if you're in an uncomfortable situation, or it's a situation you don't love, but you're comfortable there, like I'm comfortable being dissatisfied, you won't move into something that is better. And so the more you can imagine, either what you're writing down about what you anticipate your life will look like once you've done these things, the more clarity you get there, the easier I think it is to step into the hero role, because then you're going towards something good.
Yeah. Perfect. I agree. We have a couple minutes, so I just want to make sure that we cover what else we wanted to talk about here. But I do want to mention really quickly that you've got a couple of free gifts that you're offering for our viewers, and I'll let you just quickly, we'll just tell them what it is. And
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're two things. You can get a free, what we call a blue sky thinking or blue sky questionnaire. You just download it, print it out, and it's just some basic but important questions that helped us plot a course towards what we wanted to do in life without getting caught up in all the how. And so if you just want sort of a quick start on how to get a fresh view on where your life is going, you can download that for free, and it will walk you through some things that will help you think bigger, better thoughts.
And when Erik answered those questions for himself, he wrote down, live on a sailboat for a year with my family.
Yeah, our experience
And
is
6 years later,
is
we
a
were.
direct result of actually using these questions. So
Yeah.
it's been tested.
Right.
And the other is?
Oh, the other is, it's just a book club party kit that goes along with our book. We wrote a book about living on the sailboat called 7 at Sea, which you mentioned in the bio. And to go along with it, we created this kit that just has ideas for YouTube videos you can put on for ambiance, music you can play, thematic foods you might eat, and then a card game, like a conversation game you can print out and cut up, and you can play long distance with friends or by yourself. And the best part is you don't even have to have read the book.
No, the best part is that it's got a recipe for cinnamon rolls.
Oh, that's true. We met these other sailors who gave us the delicious recipe for cinnamon rolls, and we make them in the book. In the book, we do a lot of baking, and we're always on the hunt for ice cream, so we carry spoons everywhere. So anyway, those are some of the food ideas, ice cream and cinnamon rolls. But then the question games you can play whether you've read the book or not, because most of the questions,
or whether you're in quarantine or not,
because most of the questions are for you, to consider those kind of things that you want to do with your life and how you feel about being vulnerable, or what you think about adventure.
Good. Okay. Thank you. That sounds interesting. And the link will be below for anybody who's interested in getting either of those in the email that you received with the video in it. And then also they are offering a mug. You have the mug there to show our audience. This is available on their
Yeah, we do. Erik can show it.
So
for $14.99, you can purchase this on their website, and we'll have a link below for that as well. And
it's got a nice, cool ocean blue inside. It says, "What could go right?" So it's a daily reminder of all the things that could work out that you can't even imagine.
Worrying about the positive, right? About the positive.
I think it's so true, because we use our imagination to worry. Just like point it the other direction and see what happens.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful. And I know there was a lot of inspiration for the viewers, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Tracy. It's our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
So for everybody else out there, in the meantime, be courageous, and we're signing off with love and light. Thanks.